Welcome back. It's the Scaling Secrets podcast. John McDonald from thegood.com is here. John McDonald is a digital experience optimization firm, and The Good is a digital experience optimization firm, and they have achieved results for some of the largest online brands, including Adobe, Nike, Xerox, The Economist, and more. John is the author of 3 books about digital journey optimization. John is a frequent keynote speaker, and his latest book is called Behind the Click, which dives into the psychological principles behind customer decisions. So we're going to solve some problems, have some fun, share some stories. John, glad to be speaking with you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Likewise. And so I introduced you in my own words, hyped you up a little bit, but in your own words, what is your current focus and passion? What should we get really excited about along with you?
Well, I think my current focus and passion is understanding why you should be doing different optimizations for your app or e-com store. There are so many folks out there who are promoting conversion rate optimization, which I know you and I have spoke years ago. We found out we didn't know that the two of us were going to connect, and here we are years later. And the reality is back then, conversion rate optimization was really still in its infancy. It had really taken off, but it was nowhere near what it is now. Now it has become a commodity. And what I mean by that is you can go on, call them Twitter bros, you can go on and find everybody who's willing to give you a checklist of things you should do to your site to improve conversions and optimize that experience. The challenge is that the why behind that has gotten lost. And my current passion is really helping people to understand the psychological factors behind what your customers or users are doing on your website and why you should help them to understand what you need them to do on your site and help them to accomplish their own goals and make that as easy as possible. Then and only then should you start deploying tactics behind, tests you should run or changes you should make to your site.
That is a great philosophical insight. Instead of just jumping into the gimmicks, the band-aids, you look at the big picture. You look at the why and the what. Why are they there? What are they trying to do? And we take this for granted a lot of the times, right? We use all these apps. You open up Uber and you click a button and you don't really think about everything that's involved. And that means they're doing it right, I guess, right? Because you don't have to stop and kind of course correct. And so, like you said, we first connected 7 years ago. And even just morning, I was thinking even further back to 15 years ago when I knew a guy, and he would make sure that his download pages, landing pages, upsell pages were all like really nice. They were all like everything made sense. He had like a welcome video here, a thank you video there. So just this morning, I was thinking back all those years of being like, that's a good mindset to get tapped into, right? Of thinking like, where are people coming to your web pages getting stuck? Where are they frustrated? Where are they dropping off? And how can we just make it such a smooth experience? And so how do we even begin to wrap ourselves around this kind of problem? Instead of doing the bro checklist and the heat maps and the best practices, we say, well, let's get it back to basics. And someone comes to my website, I don't even know where they're getting stuck, what they should do. How do we even start?
Well, I think that the biggest concern here is that brands aren't talking to their consumers. Instead, brands and apps are all talking to each other, right? And that's where I say like Twitter bros, because what's happening is they're going on social, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., and they're talking to themselves. What worked for me? You should do the X, Y, and Z. But very few people are actually talking to their customers. What I would love to see brands do first is to do some user testing. Get people to come to your site or your app, record their screen and video, ask them to speak out loud about the experience they're having, what they would want to do on your site but can't figure out, perhaps the challenges that are stopping them in their block, and or what they love, right? So you don't get rid of the things that are helpful and positive. And if you can just start talking to your consumers, you will be so much further ahead because you'll know what tactics to deploy. And really, like you mentioned with Behind the Click, my newest book, I dive into there's over 50 psychological factors. And these are all things that are going through people's heads while they're using your app or your store. And really, if you don't know what state of mind your consumers are in, then you don't know how to meet them where they're at or how to help them overcome the challenges that they may be encountering. The real challenge for brands is they're just not talking to consumers. And that's where I would suggest they start.
Okay, and that's wise advice. We need to start talking to our consumers, and especially
Mhm.
in the over-the-shoulder style, because that's an
Yeah.
interesting insight you have there, right? And anyone that's done any kind of like software architecture, like UI, UX, knows
Mhm.
this, that there's what you think and there's what people tell you. But then when you actually watch someone like use a piece of software and where they click and what they're looking at, that's a whole
Mhm.
different insight versus what they tell you.
Right. The challenge is that, and this goes back to the psychological factors that are at play. Most people don't understand that they're holding these psychological factors. If you ask them, they wouldn't be able to tell you. And they're certainly not going to be able to name the emotions. They're not going to be able to name what's going on in their decision making process. However, they're all happening to us. They're in our like lizard brain, right? They're deep wired into our psyches. And the thing about that is that if you can understand those, then you can help consumers to take that next step and to get over those challenges that they're, some of them are self-inflicted, some of them are because of your website. You mentioned there's apps and stuff, and as we're going through it, we just utilize the app and we don't think about any of the challenges we're encountering, so then the app must be optimized. I argue that a lot of consumers have found workarounds. It's not that it's easier, right? It still could be made more simple. It still could be made more optimized and user friendly. It's just that consumers have figured out, oh, yeah, here's the pattern. I know I need to do X, Y, and Z to get my task done. The reality is, consumers are already only using your site or app for two reasons. And as we've been optimizing sites for over 15 years now, we've only ever found these two reasons. And the first is that consumers have a pain or a need. They're trying to accomplish something, right? And your job is to help them to understand, can you help solve that pain or need? So that's the first question they have. The second question is, once you have helped them determine that you can solve their pain or need, you need to help them convert. So the consumers are saying, how do I convert as quickly and easily as possible and get on with my life? Right? Nobody is at your website to hang out. I hate to break it to you. You're not Facebook, you're not Instagram, you're not TikTok. Those are sites where people go to escape and to kill time. If they are on your site or using your app, there is a very, very high likelihood that they are trying to accomplish something. And then they want to move on and hang out with their family, go back to work, get all the things done that they were supposed to be doing. So you just need to solve those two questions and you will be converting much more effectively.
I love it. Can you solve my pain and can you convert? And this is an interesting insight. And I
Hmm.
think probably once a month about this idea of thinking fast and slow, right? There's the kind of
Hmm.
hanging out mindset and there's like, I need to go and get this done mindset. And so you're saying that there's basically like two tiers of the internet, right? If someone's
Hmm.
on Facebook or Google and they're scrolling their timeline, then they're there to hang out.
Hmm.
They're there as long as they possibly can be. But then when they're on your website, your landing page, you're not Facebook. Now they're in this other zone where they want to get to that end result. And that's a really helpful insight because you always hear about these things like, well, your page should load really quickly. But then you're
Hmm.
also saying that not only should the page load quickly, but they should be able to know where to go quickly. And then when they
Hmm.
do go and click the button, fill in the form, whatever that conversion is, they should be able to get there and solve their problem, get the answer to their question, whatever that
Hmm.
is, get to that solution quickly. And you think about like when you're trying to hit a goal like this, it
Hmm.
pays to like really give more urgency than you think, right? Because like you say, like, well, I want them to really get to my goal, but make it so
Yeah.
like they can get there in like 2 clicks. So that's interesting to think about. And like you mentioned something about these psychological factors, right? Your book
Hmm.
Behind the Click mentions 50 psychological factors. So is there one that is conversation worthy here? Is there one that like
Hmm.
really stands out or you love to talk about?
Well, I think there's a play off of what we were just talking about, which is that there's two tasks people are looking to do. But within that, it goes even deeper, right? And what I mean by that is there's actually two types of consumers, right? So, and this applies to ecom, it applies to your app as people are making a decision about whether or not to subscribe or sign up for your app. But these two type of consumers are either maximizers or satisfiers. Now, with these two types of consumers, the maximizers are the folks who will do tons of research. They have 100 browser tabs open. They're looking for every little nitty and gritty detail. They're doing side by side comparisons. They want to see every angle of the product or a bullet list of every single feature that your tool offers, your app offers. And then there's the satisfiers. The satisfiers are there purely to get the job done as quickly and easily as possible. And they are going to choose the first solution that they find. They're just saying, this is inconsequential to my life. I'm going to get it over with and move on. Now, you can have both of those type of personas on your site. And you really need to meet both of those where they are. So for the maximizers, you need to have all the information available. You need to make it easy to find, right? You need to be able to compare quickly and easily. The satisfiers, you need to be able to get them from A to Z as quickly as possible without giving them too many roadblocks by throwing too much information up in front of them, right? So once you've done that, you really need to understand how are you playing with both of these personas, and how are you going to make it easy for the maximizers to get the information they need, but not display all that information at once and overwhelm the satisfiers. And so these are just two simple, really ways to be thinking about, yes, everybody's there to get a job done, but one person is going to take more care at that job than the other, right? And so it really starts to break down. Now, even within there are other psychological factors. I love one called the IKEA effect. And the IKEA effect is that if you have a hand in building your purchase, you feel so much more connected and better about that purchase, right? Everybody knows that IKEA furniture is, let's be honest, it's likely to fall apart in the next decade, right? It's not a lifetime piece of furniture, but people like the price point and they feel so much better, even though IKEA is transferring a lot of the heavy lifting to you. I mean, literally, you have to go pick up the heavy boxes at IKEA, but also you spend hours putting this stuff together. Where if you buy from a normal furniture store, it comes assembled for the most part, right? Now, you can apply this to your site by thinking, okay, if someone's a maximizer, right? They likely want to be able to have a more hand in choosing their features and benefits that are right for them. You can severely increase their satisfaction with either your products or with your app by letting them create their own bundle, for example, right? Or put a package of features together. Verizon Wireless in the US does a great job of this by saying, oh, build your own plan. We'll give you this basic plan, and then you can choose like 2 perks, they call them. And you get to choose, oh, I want Max with it or Hulu or whatever, right? Um, so there's different ways to think about this. And really, all of these psychological factors are at play when you're trying to convert somebody.
This seems like a delicate dance, but it's fun to think about these two extremes, right? The
Mm-hmm.
satisfiers and the maximizers, and you're just triggering all these old memories of mine of going to Verizon Wireless when I got my first cell phone and
Mm-hmm.
filling up the cart, or like even further back when you go to like Dell Computers website, and
Yeah.
I'm talking about like late '90s, and you choose like what hard drive do I want, and my
Hmm.
RAM and my CPU, my monitor, and it wouldn't even check out because I was just a kid. But it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun just building it and being like, like what's the price there? Do I add?
Hmm.
Do I remove? And you also think about sometimes when you go to a web page and there's just these interactive elements, right? There's
Hmm.
a calculator, there's a slider, there's the FAQ blocks where you click and they kind of pop open. And so how, like, what are the mistakes that people make
Hmm.
when applying some of this? Because I can definitely imagine that it can be easy to load up all the bells and whistles and say like, oh, I want to make it work
Yeah.
for everyone, and just like creating some crazy website that's more confusing than it's worth. And that's just an
Hmm.
example. But what do you see going wrong when people are pursuing this conversion goal, but they're really
Hmm.
messing it up?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of really a lot of companies, a lot of brands think that they should start with everything. Okay. And then we end up with an almost unusable site or an unusable app because it's just so much going on that they end up with another psychological factor happening, which is called information overload, right? To where we all make in our daily lives over 34,000 decisions. Most of those decisions we have no idea are happening, right? We're just subconsciously making them. Then there's other decisions like, oh, what should I wear today? Or should I take that new job? Or more consequential decisions that we might have, right? But really, for us, we're taking these shortcuts at each step to really kind of our brain is taking these shortcuts to really make decisions for us so that we don't get information overload, right? Think about how many things that you just don't remember throughout the day. And it's not that you really wouldn't want to remember them, it's that your mind is choosing to let that information go to make space for other things. And so your consumers having this same problem on your website. And yes, it's a delicate dance. But the problem is most brands throw too much information at consumers. And the only way to understand where that threshold is to talk to the consumers and to optimize with them along that journey. Now, that can be A B testing, which is very, very popular. But I argue there's hundreds of other ways to optimize without doing A B testing as well. I mentioned user testing. You could do things, we call it rapid validation. This is where you might just put up two screens and say, put them up for 10 seconds each and then say, what do you remember about this? Right? What stuck out to you? Right? Because then you know what has become most important. Yes, you can look at heat maps and click maps and session recordings. You can do all this stuff to understand how people are engaging, what information they're retaining, what are they just skipping over, and use that stuff to your advantage to really help people to get the best experience possible.
I love it. And I like your mindset with this, basically jumping into different experiments, right? Like
Hmm.
it's a cool exercise there of you put up the two web pages and then take it down and say, what do you remember? And just going back to the user testing and the user feedback
Yeah.
and figure out where they get stuck, what do they hate, what do they like, and
Yep.
just kind of iterating in that way. And so we've been having a kind of a fun conversation here talking about the lessons and the concepts, but I want to make
Hmm.
sure that we fit in a fun story and like a quick
Yeah.
win or something of yours. So what comes to mind as far, because you've worked with, like we mentioned, all those big brands. So
Yeah.
like what is an accomplishment that you're proud of that we can perhaps learn from?
Well, one great story that I always enjoy telling is when we went to work with one of those very large brands, and they called us in and they said, hey, our site's not converting in the way that it should. We're not really sure why. Can you come and help us diagnose this problem and then perhaps run some testing to prove out what works and what doesn't? And so we came in and we sat down and said, yeah, we'll help you do this. We want to talk to consumers. And they said, well, we want you to run tests. And we said, no, we want to talk to consumers first to understand what we should be testing. We got them on board with that, came back and said, okay, here's the changes we think you need to make and the test we want to run. Why, are you not doing it this way? And they said very clearly, well, that's just the way we've always done it. So why should we change it? So, okay, here's what we're going to do. I understand this is for a large printer company, to give some context. So they sell printers, right? And they have toner that they sell as well. What we kept hearing from consumers over and over was, I don't know what toner goes with my printer. Okay, so I bought this printer. I just want toner. I went to the website to find that out and potentially to buy it, but I can't figure that out. And it was just a huge pain point for consumers. So what we decided to do was, come in and say, hey, you need to be able to sell toner from the page of the printer. People are going to find their printer because they know their printer. It's usually written right on there. Instead of open it up, taking out the toner, looking at the code of the toner, et cetera, gets messy. They don't have time for that. Just go search for their printer model and expect to find the toner on that page, but they couldn't do it. So we went in and said, hey, you need to add this. Let's run a couple tests here. We'll show you it works. He said, no, this is how we've always done it. We said, okay, we'll come back and we'll show you why we should do this. So we took a couple days. We ran a bunch more user testing. We recorded people coming to the site. And as we were doing it, we asked them to talk out loud about what they're experiencing, what challenges they were having. And we kept having people say, I can't find the toner. I'm on the printer page. I own this printer. What toner does it take? And we kept all those recordings, clipped them together into about a 10-minute video of these different clips of people doing this. And in the bottom corner, we put a ticker of amount of revenue that they were losing every time someone got frustrated and would leave the site because they could not complete the task they wanted to do. And what it took was for the high-level executives who were saying, no, we're a printer company, not a toner company. Yes, we sell it, but that's not what the website's for. The website is to sell printers. And it took them to see all these people being frustrated and them losing revenue, really, for them to get empathy and to say, okay, let's make this change. Let's make it easy for them. And sometimes that's what it takes, is to help bring that human connection. Now, if this company had just spoke to their customers, right, they would have been so much more happy. And they would have been able to just clearly said, yes, let's put toner on these pages. And everybody would win, right? Because the customer's happier, the brand makes more money. But they were just so stuck in their way that, I say this all the time, that it's really hard to read the label from inside the jar. As a brand, you are so close to your website. You're so close to your products. You know everything there is to know about your products. It's impossible for you to understand what it's like for a new to file customer coming to your site who has zero context, came into your site with some context that you don't know, right? What other research have they been doing? Are they a maximizer? Are they a satisfier? Right? There's all of these things you got to be thinking about. So it's really interesting to me. And I love this story because it goes to show, like, if you just do a little bit of user testing and talk to your consumers, really you can make some really meaningful changes. And in fact, that helped them increase the online revenue by over 87% year over year by making that one change.
And what's great about some of this advice is that it doesn't always have to be drastic change, right? It's just linking from that model of printer over to that type of toner, or the change was in just thinking about things a different way and saying, hey, well, the way we've always done it doesn't have to be the way that we continue to do it. And I like what you said there about how you can't read the label from inside the jar. And that's huge. And like, there's some cool insights in what you said there. Like you said, well, instead of us just jumping in and testing, we're going to kind of do the user feedback first and figure out what factor there is to test to begin with. And there's been so many times, and like again, like this whole conversation, I flash back to different experiences I've had. Like, you go to a website and you're like, okay, I'm at the website, but how do I log in and start using it, right? I go to our website, where's the contact details? Where's the social media buttons? And we've all been there where we found it immediately, or we've been like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this site doesn't link over to their Facebook or to their LinkedIn. And you're saying that kind of the go-to solution is to talk to your customers and see what they're doing and have them ideally be browsing the site,
Mhm.
narrating what they're thinking, and just explaining to you where they're frustrated, what they're trying to do, and where they are giving up. So that way you can go and begin to fix some of these problems that maybe you don't even know that you have. And
Right.
so, since this is the Scaling Secrets podcast, I definitely want
Mhm.
to fit in some of your secrets of scaling because you've worked with these huge clients. The
Yeah.
Good has done all kinds of amazing accomplishments. So, what do you have to share with us about your secrets of scaling?
Well, I would say the way that we've scaled the good all these years has been to give away our thinking. What I mean by that is just share everything. And if you go to thegood.com, click on insights, that we write over 2,000 words a week. I'm on podcasts like this one several times a week. I do a lot of speaking. I am consistently giving away our best thinking. And I'm happy to do that. Because if you want that applied to your specific situation, then that's when you need to become a client. But if you want to take this and learn from it and apply it yourself, that's awesome. Our mission is to remove all of the bad online experiences until only the good remain. And so I'm happy if you take what we have learned over the years and deploy it on your site and you remove some bad experiences. Great. You've helped us with our mission. I'm happy about that. Now, if you have started doing it, you find it's too complicated, or you just don't have time or the expertise, or you want experts to do it for you, we're here. And we get those phone calls all the time because people try to deploy these tactics and they're not experienced in it. And that's okay. But I really have found we call it expertise based marketing. We share all of our expertise and we're happy to do it because it helps spread the word. And when people have a challenge that they have tried to solve themselves unsuccessfully, they can call us and they know where to find us. And that has worked extremely well for scaling us.
And that's a great philosophy to have, this abundance mindset, and
Mhm.
saying we can't give away enough of our expertise or of our thinking. And it's kind of counterintuitive, right? That you,
Mhm.
by giving it away, you end up with more traffic and more clients and more
Mhm.
thought leadership. And you're just, again, it's flashback city today
Yeah.
talking with you, because like so many times I'm just like, oh yeah, there's that thing that like Gary Vee or Alex
Mhm.
Hormozy or whoever said, and it like sticks out because these people are just putting out the content all the time. And I'll never buy anything from Gary Vee. He's like a super high price point, but
Yeah.
then the aura around him, right? That cloud of all that content eventually leads back to him. And as you said, it's even if someone says, "Hey, I'm learning this one thing from Mr. John McDonald, and I'm going to apply this to my site," and I'll never buy from him. You're like, that's fine. That's part of our mission of improving the world. But then there's those other cases there where someone says, well, hey, I got a quick win from John, or I need to solve this problem, and like John's blog post like help me, but I'm just like, this is a bigger problem than I thought. I need to go and have the real phone call and really help him and his team. And
Mhm.
so was this how you always were? Did you ever struggle with this philosophy? Do you see others struggling? Because it's kind of a, I don't know why, but it's like a scary
Yeah.
concept even to think about it, like giving it all away.
It is a scary concept. And I see most, especially consultancies, which a lot of good agencies are, right? Now, there's just agencies running SEO, things of that sort that have really become commodities and they're literally just going down the checklist and doing the task for brands. But there's others that are really they're selling their thinking. That's what they're selling to begin with, right? Somebody wants to work with them because they know they are as cheesy as the term is now, thought leaders, right? They have a good understanding and really go back to the Gary Vee model. Okay. Gary, you're right. Like you and I are not going to work with Gary Vee. Gary Vee is working with the enterprise level brands. That's what his agency works with. However, now say I repost something on LinkedIn from Gary Vee, and then an executive at one of those enterprise brands happens to follow me and sees it. then that's reinforcing, right? It's continuing that flywheel. Or perhaps maybe somebody asks me, hey, I really need some like extremely high level social marketing, and I want to talk to the expert. Who is the person who has been in this industry forever and shares everything? Who would that be? And you'd say, well, Gary Vee comes up. He's been in social forever, and he was one of the first ones doing YouTube videos. So, if I want to learn about that, who am I going to go to? Then I read his books, and then I'm like, wow, this is great. It's a lot of work. I want it applied to what we're doing here at my big enterprise company. I'm going to call Gary Vee up and know that I'm already sold when I called him, right? I've already got all the social proof. I've got the recommendations, referrals. I have seen the books. I've seen the YouTube videos. I saw where he started and where he is today. And I'm sold before I even pick up the phone, right? So it's a very different type of experience. And it really means that we don't have to do any outbound sales, right? So every lead that comes in is a lead that really my job as the CEO of the company, and the only role I really play anymore on a day-to-day, is to help clients to understand if there's a good mutual fit in sales, right? So by the time they've worked their way to having a conversation with me, I just want to know, are you a good mutual fit, right? Do our goals align? Do our morals align? Can we really help you? Do you have the resources if we come in and make recommendations? Because it's not about selling them, right? At that point, all of the other content has done the selling for us. All the expertise that's out there has already convinced them.
Wonderful. And that's a place where you want to be, right? Where there's that low sales resistance, and when we don't have to try so hard and sweat so hard, and you just have all of the momentum in place. You have the content, you have the awareness, you have the digital footprint, you have the thought leadership. So that way they just come to you. And that's the place where we want to get to. And speaking to that, we definitely want to make sure to mention your book and your company and all those other things. So if someone says, man, John McDonald is living what he preaches, right? He's giving me these good ideas and I could just take that and go and apply it. But how do I really get the good stuff? How do I find out about the company, the services, the book? What's the next step call to action?
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about the good, just go to thegood.com. If you are interested in my latest book, it's called Behind the Click. You can pick up a copy at thegood.com/BTC for Behind the Click. And if you're interested and you do buy it from us, it's available at every bookstore, Amazon, etc. as well. But if you're interested in buying it from us, you can use a discount code on our site. When you go to make the purchase, just use BTC as in Behind the Click podcast 50, and that's good for 50% off any edition of the book. So feel free to do that if you're interested in reading all about those psychological factors that we touched on today. And if you want to get a hold of me, easiest place, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm very active on LinkedIn, sharing all of our thinking every single day.
Very cool. So optimization has many different forms of expression. And if we can get it right, then we can just have this impressiveness about us. We can attract the right clients. And then we can then say, okay, well, is this a good fit? It's not just a case of, well, can I close you? Can I sell you? Now you have this freedom to say, well, I want this customer or I want to turn down that customer. And it's all about having that good fit. And so on LinkedIn, John McDonald, that's JONMACDONALD. And then you said thegood.com/BTC to check out the book. And as people are checking out that LinkedIn details and the website and the book, I always like to end these podcasts with a bang instead of a whimper and ask my guest about a fun quote or lesson that has really helped them that can help us. So what comes to mind, Mr. John, as far as a fun quote or lesson?
Yeah. Wow. I have so many quotes. I think that the one that I'm really interested in right now is that, you know, it's so much better to be in a good business than to be good at business. There are so many people who are amazing business operators, but they're operating the wrong business. And I think that that's something to really consider, because there's so much emphasis on all social right now. I see it all over LinkedIn about how to be so good at business. But if you don't apply that in the right area, you're really not going to get very far. So it's so much better to be in a good business than to be good at business.
I love it. Well, that is food for thought, something to think about so that we can find our fit, find our passion. John McDonald, author of Behind the Click: How to Use Hidden Psychological Forces That Shape Online Behavior to Craft Digital Journeys That Delight, Engage, and Convert, from thegood.com. John, it's great to catch up with you after 7 years here on Otter PR Scaling Secrets podcast. Loved having you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Great conversation.